Welcome to the West Virginia Case Podcast, hosted by Les Odell. Join us as we dive deep into all things strange, including Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, and more. Pull up a chair and set for a spell. It's going to be a great time. Now, without further delay, let's get the show started.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey folks, welcome back to West Virginia Case Podcast. Tonight we have going to have an awesome show. We got some awesome guests here. They're going to talk about their type of research, things they found in their research, all different kinds of cool stuff that they delve into. Tonight is Jami and Jenny King. They are out of I can't remember exactly where they're from, but right off the hand. But shoot, I'll just bring them on. Here we go.
Hi.
I had a brain fart there. I'm sorry. I couldn't remember the town.
That's okay.
How you guys doing tonight?
Yeah,
Good,
real good.
how are
Thank you
you?
for having us.
Absolutely. I'm glad you come on. I really enjoy the type of research you guys do. I really respect the type of research you do. Some people may call it weird or alternative, but I think it's fascinating. So I'm glad to have you. We've got some people already coming on.
Hi, people.
Hi, everybody. But yeah, what I like to do is to start with is just give the guest a chance to tell everybody who they are. We're not necessarily like what got you into the parent. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but just who are Jami and Jenny King? So Jami, if you want to start first, just tell everybody who you are, where you come from, and then we'll go from there.
Jenny, go ahead.
He always makes me go first. But I mean, Jami and I have actually known each other since we were 10 years old. And we went to high school together. Well, actually, grade school and high school together. We've known each other quite a long time. But I grew up in Transfer, Pennsylvania. He grew up in Greenville. We went to the same school.
And we currently we live in Majory, Ohio. So it's like Brookfield, Ohio, near Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah. So
I was trying to get Youngstown. That was what I was trying. I just had a brain.
Yeah,
like I said, it froze up there.
So we're right on the Pennsylvania-Ohio border.
Right.
I liked when you introduced us and you talked about like we were how we got into it, and I think you have a lot of things in common with us. But Jenny and I had a Bigfoot encounter in Pennsylvania that kind of changed the way we look at everything, and our backgrounds are. Jenny, maybe you're
backgrounds.
better. Our backgrounds, like Jenny's into energy healing.
Oh, you mean like what I'm currently doing, I guess. I thought you meant you want me to go back further. But yes, I am a Reiki healer. It's energy healing that I've been doing for, about 3 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually opened up quite a bit for me, just being involved in that and getting the Reiki attunements.
How did you get into that? I mean, I know Reiki is the energy healing, and I know a couple of people that do it. So where did that come from? Like one day I was like, I want to be a Reiki healer. How did that start?
I don't know. I knew about it also. I actually had like a Reiki session myself, probably 10 years before I got my first attunement. So I wasn't thinking about, I want to do this myself. Like 10 years ago, I just thought, this is really cool. And it was very fascinating. It opened me up even back then. But probably about 3 years ago, I knew somebody that did Reiki attunements. And I was like, I feel like I'm being called to do that. It was almost like a calling or a knowing where I was like, you know what, I think this is actually part of my path and part of my journey right now is I need to look into this energy healing. And then started talking to somebody about Reiki, which led to one thing to a next. You can call them synchronicities. And it led to me getting my first 2 attunements. And then my third one, I kind of waited. to get my Reiki masters, and
Mhm.
it was kind of interesting because we went to check out a couple's sighting, a Bigfoot sighting.
Yeah, we went with Bill Rigby and
Yeah.
his agents to interview somebody that had a Bigfoot encounter, and we just happened to be talking to them and about their encounter. And for
I knew somebody.
and we just happened to be talking to them and about their
That's my
encounter.
fault.
And for I knew somebody, and we just happened to
That's my fault. Sorry. It kicked on. I forgot to turn my phone off because in order to do it on Facebook, I got to watch my computer and phone.
be. Okay.
And it kicked on. It wasn't on, and all of a sudden it kicked on.
So the strange thing is they were talking about their encounter, and Jenny and I both at the same
Mhm.
time asked them, we started talking about energy and how their experience seemed slightly on the quantum level, on a spiritual level.
Yep.
And Jenny started talking to the lady, and the lady knew the person that gave Jenny her
My
first.
first 2 attunements. She's like, oh, well, I gave her attunements, so then she could become a Reiki master. And I was like, no way, and then she actually gave me my third attunement, which is the Reiki masters, which it kind of just, again, synchronicity, it kind of all worked out. So it was very cool.
Very cool. So before that, did you do any type of other energy studies?
Energy studies before Reiki. I don't know. I mean, I think I've been doing it all my life, but until the past several years, I didn't know what to call it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, it's something.
I mean, Jenny's in the medical
Yeah.
field anyway, so she's constantly taking care of people. So
Yeah, I think I was actually incorporating energy healing years ago, but I didn't realize what I was even doing.
Okay.
You know?
Very cool.
and for me too, like, I mean, Bigfoot's a small part of my world. Like when my parents passed away, these weird spiritual things happened that, I really couldn't ignore them. Like my father, for one, he passed away. I went on this hike. I had this encounter that was very physical, that with what I believe to be Bigfoot. Sorry. And then this spiritual moment happened where I'm dissecting it over in my head, what happened on that encounter. And I remembered that the very last memory I had with my dad was watching Harry and the Hendersons. So it was something that I just couldn't shake. So it kind of changed the way I started thinking about Bigfoot. The very physical encounter was very physical. And, I can see, I heard what I heard. I saw what I saw. But the other part of it was more unexplainable to me. And that's where we decided that we were going to micro study. So what we do is we micro study the Shenango, which you've been there and on your YouTube channel. That's an area that we really dive deep into it, and we want to make it like the back of our hand. We want to understand it like the back of our hand. And
I know I joke around that we probably know it just as much as Fish and Game.
Yeah, they all know us too. Like they know what we do there, and they've told us they've had encounters that they couldn't explain out at Shenango. And there's a lot of history out there with Bigfoot encounters that I did not know about before our own encounter until after, and then people started coming forward and telling us their encounters, which makes it that much cooler. And I document all of that, and it all becomes part of the what I call body of evidence. So when people come to me with an encounter and then I document it, and then I'm following up with whatever people tell me, and I'm going out and looking at the area, and we've had a lot of cool things happen.
Yeah, I remember you telling me there was a lot of Native American history in that area as well.
Yes. We have friends that are in the Seneca Nation. Lenni Lenape was the primary Indians that were in this. They were part of the Delaware tribe. So Shenango, which is literal translation, means the beautiful one. And it was a rogue Indian that got along with the other tribes in the area, but they all had this belief system in Bigfoot, which I believe it's called Masingwa. And it's actually a longer word that I can't pronounce, but Masingwa.
It is long.
And I guess it makes a noise like ho, ho, ho. So, I incorporate that in when I'm out.
I know the first time Jamie did that, like he told me about Masingwa, but I didn't know about the ho, ho, ho. And when he did it, I was like, he sounded like Santa Claus. But, that is what, the indigenous say that what Masingwa sounds like.
Very cool. So what are some of the things you've either discovered or captured there, or I don't know if I want to say captured, but you know what I mean.
Capture. We didn't capture. We gather stuff.
We usually
Gather. There you go. Yeah.
Ticks. Those are the things you don't want to capture. Ticks.
Right.
they get attached to you.
Yeah, I know that firsthand from a couple years ago out of Ohio. I ended up with, in the ER and have to take some medication. But yeah, what are some of the things you discovered there?
So what's your favorite thing that we've discovered?
My favorite thing. I don't know. I mean, both of us have been going out to the Shenango basically all our lives. Like I remember on the ATV trail, we used to call it, they go like a long time ago, people just to put whatever, they didn't have ATVs like they have now, but my dad had a Jeep and we'd go out there and, drive around. Sometimes you'd get stuck out there. I remember we ran out of gas out there, but ever since I was little, we've been going out. I've been going out to Shenango and I know you have too.
Right. So I think we're very familiar with it. So
but I would say probably the most phenomenal experience is the experience we had when we had for me, that vocalization, because I actually felt it in my body.
Which it sounded exactly like the Ohio Howl. After the fact, we had no idea what the Ohio Howl was.
Right.
So we're both in kind of like this understanding that is a known sound that is documented from Wellsville, Ohio, but we've also heard it here at Shenango, and we've also heard it in the Allegheny National Forest, and we've heard it in Ohio. So I think it's maybe possibly an East Coast type of vocalization, but I know that they've heard it out in Colorado and I think even Alaska.
Yeah,
so
there's an account here in West Virginia. They call it the Trent vocalizations. It's probably one of the best examples to match up to the Ohio Howl here in West Virginia.
That's awesome. But that's how things when things get shared and people share information, that's what becomes documentable. Like you're documenting it in West Virginia, you're documenting it in Alaska and Ohio and New York State. And
you compare notes. Like everybody compares notes. Like, okay, listen to what I recorded. Listen, this is what I recorded. And yep.
So one of my favorite things that we found is Jenny is she's a great observer of nature. So we were hiking on a couple different occasions, and we kind of say a prayer when we go out in the woods before we go hiking. We say a prayer. That's how my encounter originally happened initially. So I now give a lot of credit to prayer and our mental ability. Like that's an energy and that's a frequency that goes out. So we use that, and this. Any researcher that's out there should use what they have and they know and they understand. So I understand that worked for me, and whatever works for a researcher, they should use it. Right. And Jenny's a great observer. So, we were hiking this one day and I said this prayer, and it sounds stupid, but I will pray to God, but I also pray, Bigfoot, help me look for something. It sounds stupid, not stupid, because it's really coming from my heart.
Yeah. Right.
Jenny, we were hiking and she came across this thing that I probably walked by lots of times because we go to the same area over and over. And she was walking by and she looked at it, and there were these 9 tree branches, and they're twisted out of a tree. So when I say they're twisted, they were torqued out of a tree. And they were also, then when you look at them, they were laid out in this like bedding type structure. So
yeah, it was very odd. I'm like, how does this even happen? Because no other nothing around it was disturbed. Nothing was wrong with any of the other trees, foliage, nothing. And I'm like, how does this happen where it looked like it was actually just like out of the tree, because there was actually still some of the knots that would come out.
She's good.
And it was like, this is fascinating.
Right.
Like, how does this happen?
So then it went from that to another structure that we found. And again, she found it. So Jenny's a very good observer, but she found this, and you see people's structures on Facebook world, you see it on YouTube, and you look at a structure and you say, that is like done by Mother Nature. What we're finding, we really truly look at it and we are studying it. There's architecture to it. And when you see the architecture that you see here in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and then you see that same architecture from a researcher in Ontario, Canada, and there's some great researchers all over North America, but some of my favorite are coming out of Ontario, because when you look at a map and you follow Ontario, where these researchers are researching, and you go straight down through the Alleghenies, down into West Virginia, into Appalachia, there's a corridor, and you have to stop and you have to document and think to yourself, is this a corridor that they're using on a physical level? So I think on terms of physical, but I will also look at the angle of, is it spiritual? Is it interdimensional? I'm not going to discredit or throw it out just because it's a little more challenging to document, but it can be documented. Things can be documented. And we research with frequencies, and we use a lot of, we have this thing called plant wave. So the plant wave is this electrodes that you connect to a plant.
Well, maybe not electrodes.
Whatever.
We're not shocking it.
We're not shocking.
Right.
Almost kind of like you're doing an EKG and you're, you know, something, so you can measure the energy, and it actually plays sounds like frequency that you can hear. It sounds like music.
Yeah, I found it, or somebody had shared it with me, or I found it on Facebook, a video of somebody doing that. It was like a synthesizer or something they hooked to this tree, these leaves, and I was like, oh my goodness. I said, I got to send this to Jamie. So I sent it to Jamie, and Jamie's like, well, we do that too. We already do that. I'm like, very cool. So he's like, next time you're up this way, we'll show you how it works. I really want to see that. I think that's fascinating.
It is.
Yes. But you know, like the thing about it too is, like, we have to think of ourselves as curious, and we're curiously looking for evidence of Sasquatch. But on another level, think of Sasquatch as a curious creature looking for us too. They're observing us. So when we're using this plant wave in nature, and we connect it to the plants and it's playing music, for us that's exciting, because we're watching this frequency come out of a plant, and it's making like tones and frequencies, and it's making a music.
We're like little kids out there, like, oh, so get up to this one now.
But then you also have to think to yourself, maybe Sasquatch is watching us do this, because we've had things happen when we do this. Like, we've heard vocalizations. So it's interesting, you know, like, people use different techniques. Like, I think one of the first times that I went out with the Seaches at Shenango, and I think the Ruperts, we went to this one location where it was very close to where we had our encounter. And I remember I just decided that I was going to play John Denver. John Denver, West Virginia, you know. And I played John Denver, and it was just like, I think we had stuff happening. Like, we heard vocalizations and we've heard stuff, but, you know, I think they actually enjoyed it too. Like, you're in the woods, so the woods has its own frequency and its own sound and its own quietness, and it's also its own wildlife that make noise. So when you add something to that equation that's a little bit different, things respond to it. All animals will respond to it. So that's kind of what we do. Like, I mean, it sounds kooky and it sounds a little weird, but that's what we do.
We like to play. We like to play. Like, you know, we're kind of like kids, like I said, sometimes when we go out, but we like to make it fun.
Well, it is. It sounds fascinating, and it's, I guess you'd say, out of the box for most people. But hey, sometimes that's what gets results, and that's how we learn. I mean, if we stay in that same box, sometimes the only thing we're getting is the same things that's inside the box. You know, if we don't grab something from the outside and pull it in, it's just something may never change, and we'll never learn something different.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I hear from other researchers, and most of the researchers that I respect tell you that when they're in the woods or they're researching, they take themselves seriously, but they also take themselves lightly too, because like, literally, no one's walking out of the woods with images of Bigfoot that I've seen that are great, that I say absolutely fabulous.
Oh, that's something to talk about, because.
Go ahead. Where are you going?
No.
I don't know.
No, but, you know, everybody's like, oh, it's always a blob squatch. It's always blurry. You can't see it. Well, this is kind of, and I've heard other people talk about this, but if Bigfoot is kind of resonates at a different vibration and frequency, then kind of like light, wouldn't it kind of look different? It would be a little blurry.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be reflective in a different way. I don't know. It's just it is a theory, and it's something that people have talked about. You know, if it is moving interdimensionally, would you be able to get a clear photo of it? I don't know.
That's our beagle.
Yes,
he hears a helicopter, so he'll start barking.
I agree with you, Jenny. I mean, we to this day we really don't know what any of it is. You know what I mean? And we can put out theories, or we put out, assumptions, or I guess you'd say, but nobody really knows. I mean, there are people out there like, oh yeah, I know what it is. I can do that. I know that. But they still, or they'll. I've heard people say, this is what it is. This is what they do. This, well, if we know all that and you know all that, you should be able to lead somebody right to where they're at, what they're doing. But you can't. I mean, because nobody knows everything. I mean, we can all just have
But
our own theories, I guess, and I don't know. It's basically just still at this point. Once you have enough data, yeah, you can put something together. But for the most part, a lot of it's just still just guesswork. So
I always say this, and this is quote me on this, but give yourself permission. It's a permission slip to do things the way you understand them and do them. Because, like I always tell people, my parents taught me this because they passed away. We're only on this planet a short amount of time, so why not just do you and experiment the way you know how. Our backgrounds were, we talked about it earlier before your show started, but we were both tour guides at haunted locations, so we understand energy. And that part of us, which is the ghost hunting side of us, we already have enough information for ourselves to know on a personal level that the unknown is intelligent and it does respond and it is documentable. So there's a great feeling in that you understand it. So when you understand the paranormal, then you can move it into the next level, which is where we're at with this Bigfoot. And we've moved it into other levels too. Like Jenny and I, we just really look at nature and the forest as a teacher. So we started doing other things. Like we were in after our Bigfoot encounter, we went to a psychologist to talk about our experience because it was that profound. And then, and my father. Yeah. So losing my father was a huge thing, and losing my mother around the same time was big. So I really went to grief counseling, and then she started talking to us about this group called the Free Thinkers. And we went to meet these other people who the psychologist, who is related to Jenny, suggested that we talk to, because we met a woman that believed she was abducted by aliens, and she started doing these. We would go on field trips to Shenango. So we would go on this field trip, and we started doing CSETI, which CSETI is based off Dr. Stephen Greer. So there's a whole protocol with that now we incorporate that same protocol into our Bigfoot research. And it's really fascinating when you do, but you realize that normal people, everyday people, have unexplainable experiences that they try to wrap their minds around. And that's where we're at. So we're trying to wrap our minds around how it's kind of all tied together in a way. And it really, truly is.
Right. Yeah, that leads right back to the old saying, the deeper you dig, the more questions you have than answers. So.
Yes. And I'm actually comfortable knowing that I may not get the answers that I want, but I'm going to leave this world knowing that I've tried to get the answers that, I can understand while I'm here.
Or you just keep evolving. You keep
we're evolving
and evolving.
Like I say this too, I say that we know so much about science, but there's one part of science that is the biggest mystery, which is God, our creator. But the other one is our own consciousness. So consciousness is this it's documentable, but it's also this frequency that we don't truly have science 100% on board. So to me, consciousness is sort of the final frontier. And it's weird because Jenny and I were doing this lecture in Ohio, and we were talking about consciousness and quantum physics. And this woman came up to us afterwards, and she's like, I'm a professor at Berkeley, and I teach a study on consciousness. And I was like, what are the chances of this? That's synchronicity. And, Jenny and I use the universal laws as part of our research. So when you start understanding the universal laws and you go on and you research what the universal laws are, then they make a lot of sense in how you move through the world and how you move in nature. And there's also natural laws that, the Native Americans, understand fully.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, can Can we let's delve a little bit more into like what you do with the energy, the sound wave stuff, or the vibration stuff, um, or maybe we should, or maybe the EVP stuff. Like I think that's really cool as well. I see. I'm really. You guys do so much cool stuff. I don't know what to start with first.
I can say that my when we started at Ohio State Reformatories, the first time I got a recorder, and this is how long ago it was. My recorder had a cassette tape.
Right.
Yeah, we were like the
Oh,
first.
wait, let me
We
get
were
that. I'm
really,
sorry.
we were literally the first volunteers at Mansfield Prison after the prison was emptied. So we actually helped empty that prison. So we were in there when things were being taken out and it was getting ready to become a ghost tour place, like for ghost hunts. And
Sorry, I take care of her.
we had so many things happen that like really trained us. Like we've been trained in what to expect and how to operate. But you know, EVPs in general are super fascinating. So you have to like, anyone can pull out a recorder and ask questions, but it's the way you ask the questions that's even more important. Like you want to establish intelligence. Like when we're in the forest and we may have like
Allegheny Forest.
yeah, the Allegheny National Forest. It's like I said, I will make a sound and then I'll say, can you repeat this sound? And in my mind, I'm thinking that whatever's there will understand what I'm saying.
Right.
And I don't know if it's Bigfoot or not, but I have had responses that are super, really, really cool.
Or you ask the question, what was the name of this forest?
What's the name of this forest? And on the recorder, it said the name of the forest.
Right.
In a different sound. So my voice is my voice. It comes across in a different frequency. And right. the DR60 is a very unique recorder in the way that it records, because anything that you get as a response on that recorder will come below 20 Hz. So my friend Josh Roman owns a recording studio, and every time we've gone ghost hunting or, you know, and we've had something exciting, or anytime we've gone Bigfooting that we've had something exciting, I will take it to Josh's studio and he'll connect the recorder, put it on the computer, and he has his soundboard, and he will literally stand there in awe and be like, this is all below 20 Hz. Like it's very cool.
It is pretty,
So
it's cool.
It's 20 Hz is infrasound. So
right.
you know, I understand that from the ghost hunting world. I didn't really realize that it's also a thing within the Bigfoot community, in that they believe Bigfoot responds in 20 Hz, you know, infrasound. And in the known biological world, there's animals that respond in Hz, 20 Hz, elephants,
infrasound,
you know, there's so many animals. Like it's fascinating. But, you know, I think that probably when people say they're being zapped, that's.
Yeah, I'm wondering if, because it's a certain frequency, vibration.
Right.
Like when we heard our vocalization, I swear my eyeballs were vibrating, you know, and I could feel it in my body. Like I don't feel like I blacked out necessarily, but it was very odd.
You know, and like you hear people say zap, you know, like literally with Jenny and I, when we had our encounter, we really stood silent and we stood in awe of what was happening to us. Like we were hearing the sound, we were experiencing trees in front of us shaking, but literally what we felt was below our feet, this puddle rippling on the floor in our body. So then it becomes like this moment of like, this is all encompassing. So when something's all encompassing, that's a very powerful thing. You know?
That's our first experience too. And we, you know, Bigfoot wasn't on our minds at all. We weren't even thinking about Bigfoot. We were just hiking. You know, we weren't into Bigfoot at that point. And that's why we were like, what the heck? What did we just hear? What was that? I said, it sounded like a dinosaur. I said, I have no idea.
Yeah, and then you hear other people on podcasts describe it just like that, Jurassic Park. And then it adds to the whole thing where, like, you know, this is really, truly what we experienced, you know, and I don't know. I love when people share, because when you share, that's when things help other people put these puzzles pieces together. And then it can also spark an interest in someone else, that an idea that you may not have had yourself, or a recorder, let's say a recorder, like I'm talking about a recorder, then somebody takes a recorder out and discovers a new way to record. that's pretty fascinating. But I always say to people, don't be afraid to do things for yourself and find answers for yourself, because I don't really care if other people believe how we research. I would welcome people to come with us and experience it for themselves, because you can decide for yourself. But like I'm confident in the way we do stuff for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, if you get the results that you're, well, I can't say that you're looking for. I mean, because then you're kind of, but if you get results and the way you do things with the way you do things, then that's your way of doing it, you know.
Yeah.
But I do have one question. I've asked this to a couple people this before, and you were talking about, saying we was talking earlier about like you'll put it out a question for your EVP record or for your recorders to catch EVPs, and you'll say, "Hey, if this is big, Bigfoot's here or something like that, can you make this sound?" And I've asked somebody this before, and they couldn't really give me the answer. And I'm hoping that you guys can at least enlighten me a little bit or give your insight to it. If you do that, and this Bigfoot entity or whatever you want to call it is supposedly just an animal, this lives on instinct alone and stuff like that. How does it know what you're saying to it? Even if it is something that's has an ability to be on a different wavelength, but still a flesh and blood animal that supposedly lives in nature, and that maybe we can't see because of that different wavelength. But how it basically what I'm saying is, how does it understand? The question: how does it understand our language if it's just an animal?
Well, this is a question that we've asked ourselves too, but
Yeah.
I want to hear Jenny's response, and then I'll respond.
Well, you were talking about, how it's seen or not seen. To me, how it understands us is, I think it kind of resonates on a higher frequency and vibration, and I think it is able to know what we're thinking, not just saying out loud, but actually think. Yeah, I think it can go to that level where it knows what we're thinking before we probably even say it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I could see that.
So what I'll say about that is I've asked myself that question many, many times, especially when I got responses. I had to sit back and think to myself, more so I was addicted to the recorder. What's going on with this recorder that makes it so special? Because literally there's no other recorders out there that record like it does, because EVPs are EVPs, and being at haunted locations, I know that my voice is my voice. Another voice that will come across can sound like a voice that is like in the room with us, but the DR60 comes across in a frequency that is very, very understandable. So then I started thinking about the recorder, and I was like, is it picking up on my own thoughts and responding to my own? But then I would do something different. Like at ghost hunting locations, I would hold a book out and I would point to a word, and I would not look at the word. So I don't know what the word is. And someone would put a flashlight on that word and then would say, "What can you tell me what this word is?" And it would say the word. And then
Uh-oh. Hey, Jamie. Hey, guys. Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Can't hear you. We lost sound. Hold on. I don't know what's going on here. Please. Can you guys hear me in the chat room, or was just is it everybody or just Jamie and Jenny? Okay. Well, I think they went out. Let's see if they can get back in here. I might have to send them a new link here. Hold on 1 minute, folks. Let me send them a new link.
I think we can hear you.
There you are.
I don't know what happened.
See, we're talking about
frequency and vibration.
Yeah. You guys went black. It blinked and went black, and then when you come back, nobody could hear you at all.
Oh wow!
It's the energy.
I know. Is it sometimes this? Maybe I should talk about. There's some strange things that happen to me. Sometimes.
She blows up microwaves.
Yeah, we don't. I said we're never getting a microwave again. I've blown up two. I can't. I like put my phone on my body and have it too near me for too long. My phone will mess up.
Street lights will go out when we drive by with her.
Really?
I can't wear a watch.
I would very say that was the only thing I ever had happen when I was a kid. I couldn't wear a digital watch. I would, as soon as I put it on, I would mess it up. But
oh yeah, I can't wear any kind of watch. It messes up.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I don't know where I don't know where he was at, but yeah, you blacked out and come back and you had no sound. So I'm not sure what you all were saying.
I think we were talking about, oh my gosh,
just...
we've been all over the place.
Well, we'll just talk about the next
what hole would you like to go down?
Let's just go into the paranormal side of stuff. You're investigating, Hillview and stuff like that. What is, because you were talking about the EVP stuff, because I asked you that question, and the second part of that question also is just not Bigfoot related at all, but how I always wonder, like when you're in a location that supposedly has activity that goes back, centuries, and and some people are like, oh yeah, this is a site of a Native American this and Native American that or something. I just use Native Americans because we're here in United States, but I've always wondered if we're talking to those energies or spirits of Native Americans, and I mean, I know some did understand, they were taught, English and stuff, but how if some didn't, how are they able to understand us and talk back? How is their voice or their answers translated into a language that we understand?
Right. Yeah, it is fascinating because we've been ghost hunting and another language will come across, and actually sometimes, if it's German, Jamie's fluent in German, and even though he's talking in English.
Right. Like So we were on this one ghost hunt, and it was one of our friends. She had a haunting at her house, and she told us to come to her house. She lived in Monaca, Pennsylvania, and she said that she would have this activity happen in her upstairs bedroom, and her children were seeing stuff. So we went to this location, and we had a Frank's box, which my friend made. It's a spirit box that
Right.
scans AM/FM radio waves, and on this Frank's box, German kept coming across, like German language. And this is kind of crazy. And I was understanding what it said, and it was talking about a gun. So I said to Liz, our friend who had this haunting, I'm like, is there anything in here that's German related? And she said, yes. In the closet, they had this box that was her husband's grandfather's box. And she brought it down, and we started looking through the box. There was a gun in the box. It was a German gun, and there was a foot soldier, like a little leather pouch, and a map. So the map was in German. It was a footpath map. And then I started asking questions in German for this thing, and it started responding in German. And I said to Liz, what side of the war did his grandfather fight on? And she said, well, I always thought it was American. But I said, I don't think so. I think this is a German, this is a German gun, and this is a German map.
You're right.
And, I guess it's possible that he could have gotten that from being a U.S. soldier, bringing it back with him. But their last name was very, very German. And I said, you better ask your husband which side. So I don't know. Really don't know how things understand language. And maybe the original way we communicated, like when you read the Tower of Babel, people were trying to build this tower to heaven, and God crashed the tower and confused the languages. And maybe it's quite possible that our original language, and this is just me thinking, I don't know anything, but maybe our original language was frequency and vibration.
Right.
And it's all understandable. We don't know, we're never going to know these answers until we go to this next level. But that's just the theory that I have. Maybe it was all frequency and vibration, because, people get a vibe, and they get this vibe. Right. And some people understand that they go with this vibe, and that's a language in itself, and that's a sense. Like, we think of our known senses, but a vibe is also another sense.
Right. Yeah. I feel the same way, that it's not necessarily on a physical level. Sometimes it has to probably do with, like you guys talk about, our energy that we project, our energy waves, or our, what are they called? Brain waves, what are the sine waves or something like that they're called? Is that what I'm talking? Yeah. I think maybe we're able to, in some cases, these spirits or see, I don't want to always say spirits, because I don't think we're always dealing with a necessary spirit. I think we're dealing with some type of energy at times.
Yeah.
I think that energy is able to read or pick up and interpret those waves that we give off. And that's how it's done. Almost like that, what is it on Star Trek, that little translator that they have. I think it was, yeah. So I think, it's pretty cool. Very cool.
The Tower of Babel, that's an interesting story. And, you have to even ask yourself the question, why did they divide? Like, why were things, God didn't want us to get to this level of oneness. I don't know, to confuse it. Maybe because things are meant to be mysteries, and that's okay. Everybody's in a race to answer mysteries and find the next answer, but it's more fun for us anyway. If it's not fun, then we won't do it. But
Right.
Yeah.
The whole path and the whole journey to finding answers. And for me, losing my parents became this, change, a huge change in my life, where I had to understand energy. And, I went to church all my life, but this experience brought me closer to God, our creator. So we're creating as we go. We're born creators. So we're creating everything. And then I realized we're energy. Everything's energy. Energy doesn't cease. So when I was getting these profound experiences, not just from my father passing away, and I always talk about that in the podcast, I had profound things happen when my mom passed away that I couldn't explain. I had a really profound experience the day before 9/11 that these are marker events in my life where I realized something's different in the way that I'm sensing the world around me. Like I saw 9/11, Jenny saw it. We're so connected. It's really strange, but we both had an encounter where we saw 9/11 the day before 9/11.
Well, mine was like a week before.
Yes. And I don't know how to explain it, but I look at it like this, like animals know of danger before it happens.
Makes sense.
And I think that as a human being, I think we're like that too. I mean,
I think for some people it's turned on a little bit more. There's maybe not as turned on. It doesn't mean they don't have the ability to do that, because we all have the ability to do that.
I think if more people would talk less and sense and I mean it for real, like talk less in this world and sense the world around them.
Right.
I think that things would be a little bit different if you really allowed yourself to use the energy of even just meditation. Like we meditate sometimes when we go out on these hikes. If you just allow yourself that moment of freedom to not speak and not do anything, you're sensing the world a little bit differently.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly there. Because I always tell my wife, she'll look at me, she goes, I know you need to go out. I know you need to go to the woods. The kids are like, Dad's a little bit grumpy. He needs to go to the woods. But some people are like, well, why do you like to go in the woods? Why do you like being out? Because
it's healing.
I'll just go out and sit and just listening to the wind through a pine tree is like,
yes,
like the best sound you've ever heard. And not only is it the best sound you've ever heard, but it's fascinating if you sit there and you look at it or you listen and you watch the tree and you listen and you're thinking, and to yourself, you're like, how does that work? And I just love it. And then when I come home, my wife said, "Are you better?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "But everything here is, when you come back into civilization, I guess you want to say, come back in
your life, yeah.
It just seems so loud. Like everything's overwhelming and just so loud. People just don't realize just going out, sitting down, and listening to the natural sounds is so therapeutic that
I call it ecotherapy. It's ecotherapy. If you're stressed out in your daytime, literally Jenny and I hike every day. We're not hiking today because we're talking to you, but it's a frequency, and literally you can go out and it changes your mood. Like you'll be in a bad mood from work and you go out hiking
and you just feel a little edgy, or you just feel like, man, like you're just like, once you get out there, like.
But you know what? When I came out to meet you and Bill at Shenango, I saw Bill, and that was super exciting. But then I was like, "Where's Les?" And when I came up hiking and I saw you just sitting there, I was like, "I see what he's doing. That's really good." You were really you were taking in that environment of Shenango because you were trying to understand it, and that's how you do it.
Right. Yeah, I would just sit down and like, let's listen to just listen to the sounds, and you could hear the water, and it's just like it's a great feeling to do, and some people like, oh, it's weird. No, I mean, if you just would try it once in a while, you understand.
Right.
No, it's not weird at all. I don't think it's weird. And what's wrong with being weird?
Hey, you sound like Mason. He's like, Dad, we're just weirdos. We're just weirdos.
In a good, but the best kind of way.
You know what he calls me, Jamie? Mason look at me and said, Dad, you're a weirdo with a beardo.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
He's very
great. It's great. I love that he's into it. I mean, he likes being outdoors with me. He's into he's 8 years old, and we'll have discussions about, the paranormal stuff, nothing creepy, but it's pretty awesome to have somebody to talk to about like that.
And you want him to ask you questions,
Right.
Yeah.
So let me ask this. When we were talking about the EVP stuff again, and I you're the first person you got, or first people, I'm sorry, that have said that when you've asked for a sound to be repeated in EVP, like as far as Bigfoot investigating or research, that you've actually got a response on the recorder, not necessarily,
Yeah.
not necessarily hearing it, but on the response. Was that sound below that 28 hertz or?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, the
I would think so.
very first time that I did it, I was in the Allegheny National Forest, and I was with a group of people that were primarily, it's an ape, it's an unknown ape. And, like I'm the person that injects into it, like, well, I'm going to research it this way just for myself. And the one person that was there brought his daughter. She was camping with us, and I think she was probably like 8 years old, like Mason's age. And we went over to this area where we were at, and it dropped down, but we were hearing stuff all night, like something coming up that mountainside. And basically I pulled the recorder out and I said, can you tell me the name of this forest? And literally it came across on the recorder. I didn't hear it with my ears, but when we played it back, it was an intelligent response, and it was in English. And I don't know what to say other than, like it was a Bigfoot research. And in my mind, I thought I was communicating with Sasquatch, but I don't know. And I can say that I don't know. I don't. And the Allegheny National Forest in itself is really cool because it got its name by the Allegui, which were these giants that lived among the Indians, in the Allegheny National Forest.
Right. Wow. See, now you brought up something else that I really enjoy is
yeah.
There's a giant stuff. How much have you looked into that?
I really do. I researched a lot of that, and like Jenny and I were friends with Native American people locally that have had encounters. So there's somebody that we work with that's in the Seneca tribe. Then there are two other people locally here at Chenango that are with the Lenape tribe, and they've had encounters. So the one, Robert W. Morgan, interviewed this Native American person that we currently work with. They interviewed his father because his father had an encounter at a roadkill site.
Okay.
And he had this Sasquatch stand up in this where they dumped the roadkill, and he was archery hunting. But Robert W. Morgan was one of the first people to interview him, so I was like super stoked about that. Like that's kind of cool. And then there was there's another lady that's Native American that had a Bigfoot encounter here in Mercer County, Pennsylvania, and Matt Moneymaker had originally interviewed this woman.
Now, when you said, okay, you're talking about Bigfoot when I said something, asked about the giants. Do you feel that Bigfoot and the other stories of giants, like I guess the mound builders, the giants that are skeletons have been found in mounds, do you think those are related, or you think that's a completely different subject, or you think they're completely different?
Yeah, that's a good question because I don't know, but it seems like they're not exactly the same. That makes sense. Like to me, like what I've looked at and researched, that I don't know if they are the same being.
Here's my, like we kind of differ on that because I kind of think that maybe it is, but I also, this is what I talk about in our lectures too, is I think that Pennsylvania in general had a lot of Native American tribes that lived here, but pushed out. William Penn had this agreement with them. Then they finally got pushed out into Ohio. So they got pushed into this area of Coshocton and this area called Gnadenhutten. And these were where the Moravian missionaries from the Czech Republic and Slovakia would come, and they were trying to westernize these Native American tribes. And I think this is just my theory, and talking with a lot of the tribal people that we've worked with here at Chenango, is that their ceremonial beliefs, so the beliefs that they had, became part of the DNA of the land. So it's almost like ghost hunting. Like if you, it's an imprint. So it becomes this imprint in the land. So like a prayer is a super powerful thing. So and a curse is also a powerful thing. So when the Native Americans left Pennsylvania, they kind of cursed Pennsylvania in a way. So maybe there's something to all of that. Like it becomes part of the land, which also becomes like hauntings are like that too. If somebody dies tragically, then that event can become part of the haunting, or played over and over like a record. So I
Right.
think their belief systems, whether it be Masingwa, whether it be Alagui, they then become part of that DNA of the land.
Okay, someone put a question up here. Since you brought that up,
Yeah.
let me. I enjoy reading about giants or reading into the giants. Do you think giants are descendants of the fallen angels that come down and mated with women? The reasons for the flood to clean the bloodlines of the reason for the flood to clean the bloodlines of God's chosen. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Like, Jamie was saying, we kind of differ on that, but I think, like Sasquatch is kind of their own beings.
Okay.
Like, of all the giants around the world, I think some of them maybe weren't necessarily maybe a species of Sasquatch exactly. Maybe they were a little bit more humanoid or more human.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking very subjectively too. Like no one has the answer, but this is just our thinking. And no, there's a disclaimer: is it doesn't have to be an imprint
Yeah, I'm
on
not
you.
sure.
Right.
My feeling is that I mean, I've heard the Nephilim theory, and
Right.
I've given it thought, and I think that it's possible. And I don't know a whole lot about angels, and I don't really give a lot of power to demonic anything. But even the Dog Man has its own thing
Right.
with Sasquatch and maybe possibly Nephilim. I don't know, but I don't know what I was gonna say. I don't know what I was gonna say. It just happens to me.
Don't you hate that?
Yes, I don't know.
I mean, because I've looked into a lot of it here in West Virginia. I looked in a lot of, and it seems like the majority of them found were, I guess you'd say, a race of, I don't know if I want to say Native Americans or, but some indigenous, people. Uh, Most of the ones that I've found here, as far as being talked about in older newspapers, we're talking giants here, not the wild man stories and stuff like that, which a lot of people relate to Bigfoot, but they talk about being found with artifacts, I guess you'd say, brass artifacts, different stone artifacts, and there are some that seem to be part of the Adena culture, the mound builder culture. Um, Supposedly some of these mounds are excavated and they have found not necessarily what some people would call a true giant, like you hear about in olden times of 10, 12, 15, 16 feet, whatever they are, but 7 foot, 8 foot tall. And there will be, for lack of better words, I guess, I don't know how I want to say it, but there will be others, not necessarily giants, but this giant, he or she, sometimes it was a she, will be in the center, and there was almost like a spoke of other uh, tribe members, maybe, or however you want to say it, around this giant. But then there are other stories where they are just found, along creeks, here in West Virginia. There's a couple that's well known in the White Day Creek area. This to me, you guys remind me of this story because it was a husband and wife team that were out investigating and they were researching and kind of somewhat of a like amateur archaeologist, I guess I'd say. And well, they were on this creek and they noticed this stone wall that was built under this overhang, and they decided to pull down this wall, unstack the rocks, and what they reportedly found was a giant between 7 to 7.5 feet tall, or I don't want to say giant, but a human 7 to 7.5 feet tall, not in a laying position, but in a setting position behind this wall. Then there was others found in an area outside of Fairmont, West Virginia, along the Monongahela River, or Monongahela River. I'm sorry, which runs up into Pittsburgh. That's one of the three rivers going to Pittsburgh. But there was three of them found there. There was three found outside of Reesville, West Virginia, which were again along the Mon River. And if you look into some older texts where people have done some research, they talk about where the confluence of the Tigard and the West Fork come together to ford the Mon River. From there to a certain point, there were earthen mounds. They talk about earthen mounds being found, which sadly, if there was anything left now, it's probably underwater because the dams were built. But a lot of these earthen mounds were plowed under, by farmers. There's talk about artifacts being taken from these mounds in these areas in coffee bean bags full and being taken. But there is also supposedly was a road called the Macadam Road, and it was 14 inches thick, 9 feet wide, and ran this length of river until they get to a certain area. And what was pretty cool was as I did the research into the Macadam Road and some giants being found in Reesville, I come across an actual mound, which now has been just, made public. You can actually see it on the map now, but it's called the Catawba Mound. I discovered it probably 6 or 8 years ago, maybe, by talking to people, this gentleman. And it's really cool that once you found this mound, you can go back and start looking into other stuff. And
That's really great. Very good.
Cool.
So when I found the mound, I was like, wow. And how I found the mound is the three giants are supposedly buried are found in Reesville were supposedly buried in what they called the Jolliffe Cemetery. Well, through all the records I looked through, there's no Jolliffe Cemetery in Reesville. But I did find that Jolliffe was a prominent name in the Marion County area. So you can find Jolliffes in different cemeteries, small pieces. So I started looking into old maps, and actually, this is the maps right here, a CD of maps from 1886 of the area around here. And I found this one map, and I noticed on this, in the corner of this one plot, it said J. Jolliffe. And I'm like, that's really cool. And I started looking at the map. I was like, hey, that's just right down here, Catawba. And so I went to Catawba, and I pulled in this guy's driveway. And I was like, right where it showed the plot should have been. And I walked up, and this old man's on his porch. And I said, I said, I hate to bother you. I said, but have you ever heard of the giants found in Reesville? And he's like, nah. He said, I've never heard of it. And I was like, well, I was just wondering if there's a Jolliffe Cemetery here on this land, because this used to be Jolliffe land. He said, well, it's still Jolliffe land. He said, some Jolliffes still live up here. I'm a descendant of the Jolliffes. And I was like, well, I'm looking for that cemetery. I was just hoping maybe you could help me. He said, no, there's no cemetery. He said, but there is the burial mound. I was like, what do you mean? And I'm standing on his porch looking at this bank. And he said, that's a burial mound. And he took me, we walked the entire, circumference of this mound. And he said, back when I was a kid, he said the mound was known to be a mound. He said, there was a fence around it. You weren't allowed on it. We had cattle. Cattle was not allowed on it. And he said, it's just over time, just is grown over. So as I'm getting ready to leave, he goes, hey, he said, there's no graveyard here. He said, but there is a graveyard up on the other side of the creek, up on the hill. And I'm like, really cool. So I drive up to this graveyard, and I pull in, and I'm like, oh, this is just new stuff. Then I started noticing, and if you look into old graveyards and stuff, you know that family cemeteries, for some reason, were usually near some kind of big tree.
Yes.
Yeah, they had, I don't know the reasoning for it, and then they would plant usually like a big cedar pine. A lot of old cemeteries are like that. So I looked into the very back corner of this cemetery, and I see this big dead stub sticking up, probably 10, 12 feet tall. It's a huge tree that is broken off and fallen over the years. But here's that big cedar pine. And I started walking back toward it. And the first thing I noticed are these two wooden planks sticking out of the ground. I'm like, that's interesting. You know, they did that a long time ago. You know, they would use wooden planks or they use flagstone and stuff like that. Well, then I started noticing on some of these little stones, it jolliffe, 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 jolliffe. And I found several jolliffe stones in this plot. And when you go back to this tree, you stand on that bank and it drops down to the creek, and you look straight across. You can see the mound. You can just look right at the mound. So I was like, okay, I got to look into it a little deeper. So I went back and I started looking into the doctor that supposedly examined the giants found in Reesville, and I wanted to make sure he was a real person, make sure he wasn't some fictitious name. Well, I found him. I know where he's buried at, and that led into a whole nother story of me getting a whole cemetery cleaned up because of him. So I found him. I found the squire that supposedly, or not the squire, but the foreman that was in charge of the people that were digging the footer for this bridge that they found the giants along Paw Paw Creek. I found him. I know where he's buried at. So there's two people in the story that were real. You know, they're real people. They weren't, like I said, not made up names. So I started looking into the doctor a little bit more, and I did a lot of research on him and found this bio that somebody had written in a paper. And one of the passages in his bio says he was for lack of better words, but paraphrasing here, he was an upstanding member of the MP Church. And I'm like, why does that sound so familiar? And then I realized, look at the map. So I got the maps out and went through all the maps again, and I got to the one where the mound is. And I started looking at it, and well, here's the mound. The cemetery is across the road. In between it, but you know, from the cemetery and the mound, there's a little creek here called Little Creek. But right off that little creek, there's still a church here today, but it's got a different name. But on that 1886 map, it says MP Church. So if I think for a while there, I thought, you know, if they were reburied, which is a short little boat ride from Reesville down to where they were at, you know, along, and has a waterway that comes in, and the doctor was a member of that church, and that mound is there, and they knew about that mound, knew it was a sacred spot. You know, maybe they put it together that these giants were part of the mound builders. I don't know. There's nothing written about it. That maybe they're actually in that graveyard, in that Jolliffe Cemetery. So I've thought about that, or once I found that out, that's what I thought was for sure where they may have been. And then I started looking into some other stuff, and I started looking into more into the Jolliffe name. And it came to a point where I found a map again, a Reesville. I found an older map, and right beside Paw Paw Creek, there was a plot of land that belonged to a John Jolliffe. I mean, right beside it. And I was like, wow. So I started looking into him, and I found that he settled the little piece of land there as a homestead, but didn't stay there long. He actually went back to West Virginia, or to Pennsylvania, which a lot of the Jolliffes and Prickers, they came from Pennsylvania. Well, when he went back to Pennsylvania, he was gone for quite a while. He never come back. Actually, his son come back and settled, actually took over that little plot as a homestead. So now I'm wondering where that little plot was at, where the giants were supposed to found near the creek. Was there a cemetery there? You know, a small family cemetery, and it's all lost now because, you know, civilization come in, you know, buildings were built, you know, the railroad was built, the highway was built. So now I'm back to kind of square one of thinking, where are these giants at? And I still am hopeful that maybe I'll find out they're actually near that mound in Catawba.
That would be very cool.
I mean, I would imagine they would be, yeah.
Good research.
That's awesome, really, that you did all that, yeah. But that's how you find answers. Is sometimes you got to look at like the names and the words. Why was something called something? Why was... Right. That's how you get answers.
Right. And there's probably a lot of places where there's burials that we have no idea. Like, because it's been, you know, so long ago, like the Shenango, there used to be houses there, and it was all flooded to make the dam.
But then ask yourself too, why did they flood some places too? Like you'd have to go back and say, why did they use eminent domain to flood something? Was it really a water control? I don't know. Maybe it was to bury secrets.
Yeah. Well, here in West Virginia, that's I mean, every lake around. Actually, there's only one lake in West Virginia that's a natural lake, and it's what they call the trout pond in Hardy County. Every lake in West Virginia other than that is man-made.
Really?
You know, towns have been flooded. Yep, like Sutton Lake, Summersville Lake, Cheat Lake, Tiger Lake. They're all man-made by dams. So yeah, only one lake in West Virginia is natural.
So what was there before? It was just wetlands.
Just streams, just rivers and streams.
Because Pennsylvania, like that, like where Jenny's family lives, it's called Jackson Center, Pennsylvania. It was all strip mines, and they had swamps. So like Pennsylvania was like big woods, but it was also swamps and huge ways. So when they did that, it's interesting what was there to find out what was there before, like historically. Right. So it's nice to dig in. Like you're really digging into the history, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's you when they drain the lakes for winter pools, some of these lakes around here, like especially like Summersville, like you can go and you'll see the sidewalks and you can see the roads and that were there before they flooded the towns.
Come back to Shenango when in the wintertime. That's my favorite time because it's you can walk out there where
there's a lot more shoreline.
I just recently, like now that you're talking about this, I just recently went sky watching with our friend Sparky and another person, and this other person told me, she said, "Do you know where the old cemetery is?" And I said, "No, I've always wanted to know." Like I know where they moved. I knew where they moved the graves from to a new location in Clark, PA, but I didn't know where the old one was because they said back in the day people were swimming and bodies were floating up because they moved the graves, just the marker.
Yeah.
So then I realized that area where the old cemetery was, when we go out there, it's very haunted. Like we have EVPs come across the recorder that are, real EVPs of voices.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm looking here. Pennsylvania, I've discovered it's full of haunted old homes. The Gettysburg Jail is haunted. I've never really it's never really been updated. Have you guys ever been to Gettysburg?
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a while, but
I mean, it's haunted.
I would like to go back.
I've been through it, but never had the chance to investigate it or visit the battlegrounds proper. You know what I mean? I've when I drove truck, I drove through there quite a bit, but I've always wanted to go. And what is it? Satch's Bridge is what they call it. Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I'm not really sure. Like I know, my sister lives in Maryland, so that's near Antietam Battleground, but it's all haunted. Like very haunted. Like we've had our friend was jogging in the morning, took a photograph, sent me the photograph, and said, "Jamie, what is this in the photograph?" And I'm looking at this photograph. She was taking a picture of sunrise, and there was a woman with a bonnet, and behind her was a duck, and they were see-through. Like you could see through.
Wow.
Them. Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
And a duck?
A duck. It was like
like a duck in the
like it's not something you make up. Like she literally sent me this picture and said, blow it up. And it's literally, you can see the woman with the bonnet, and there's a duck on the ground behind her in a basket. She has a basket.
Wow. Yeah, we have a battlefield here outside of a little ways outside of Elkins and Beverly. It's called Droop Mountain. It's Droop Mountain Droop Mountain, and there was all kind of different stories there. But one of the stories there is talks about a headless horseman or a headless horse or something like that. Some crazy stuff goes on there. Soldiers have been seen walking. It almost reminds you of some of the stories you hear about Gettysburg, but just here in West Virginia. And it's not a very big place either, but it's pretty cool.
Well, like you hear the stories of like cemeteries and stuff like that they're always guarded by some sort of cryptid, like whether it be like a dog man type thing. People have had Sasquatch experience. We've taken reports here at Shenango in a cemetery where somebody saw something there's always something associated. You should go there and like record paranormally and see if you get anything.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit about, and I always wondered why there was actually stories about Bigfoot being seen in graveyards. There's a lot of reports about Bigfoot in graveyards. Yeah.
Yeah, and Dogman reports. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but you hear it a lot.
Yeah, there are stories. I don't know if it's just because of different lore here in West Virginia, but there's a lot of people talk about hellhounds and the snarly owl and stuff here around cemeteries. So yeah, I mean, could that be like what some people call them dogmen? I mean, it's a good possibility.
That's true.
Yes. But I mean, also do this too. Also start looking at locations that have Bigfoot haunted. And this is for anyone that's a researcher. Start looking at that and then ask yourself, why are they having those encounters in those areas? So like, is it the haunting too, or is it something to do with the ley lines, energetic ley lines? Because in the UK, they have huge studies on ley lines and all. So that's something to look into. Like here, Shenango is the intersection of the Great Lakes and the mound builders. So the mound builders and the Great Lakes, that's what they call the ley lines that cross here.
Right.
So it's like Sedona, like it's this spiritual mecca where, like people don't use Shenango like they should because it's a gem. It's beautiful.
Right.
Sedona's a very energetic place where people go, but I kind of like it that nobody does go here.
Right.
Well, people do, but not maybe not like we do.
When I was there that day, I thought it was fascinating. I mean, it seemed like it just seems like there's a certain energy there that you can feel. It's like it draws you in. And I've only been to a handful of places like that, and that lake, is one of them.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty special to us too.
Well, we're at a little over a minute, hour and a half, or hour and 15 minutes. So it's usually about when we wrap it up. I'm looking to see if we have any questions. I'll see if anybody has any questions. I don't think there is. I've already put most of those up. Oh, yeah, here's one. I missed this one. So what is the reasoning for the negative energies of Native American land?
Well, I don't know if this has something to do with it, but their land was taken from them.
Yes.
It was pretty much genocide.
Right.
What happened to them. So I think they were very spiritual people, and that probably does kind of do something that kind of goes into the land, into the earth, I think.
But I mean, like, if you think in terms of negative and positive.
Yeah, I don't know if it's really, I don't know if it's really negative. Maybe to me, maybe it's more just what happened to them is just so sorrowful. It's so, what happened.
I mean, it becomes an imprint. Like when I lived in Europe, I went to Auschwitz, and they say at Auschwitz that birds do not fly over Auschwitz.
Yeah.
I really stood there, and it's like you don't want to take pictures. You have this like knot in your throat, and you really look up, and you're like, "There's no birds." Like literally, it's a weird thing. But that's probably the same thing with Native American land. Pennsylvania was all kinds of Indians, but they were pushed out, so their belief systems remained here and went with them into Ohio and to the Midwest and down to West Virginia. I don't know. Are there reservations in West Virginia, or did they no longer have any?
Honestly, I don't believe so. Not that I know of. Yeah.
It has the same kind of imprint on the land, and that's just how I look at it. But it becomes an imprint. Negative.
Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Mason.
I got a new chair.
Jamie says hi.
Hi.
I got a new chair.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I'll be out in a minute.
Yeah.
And then someone says, why do skinwalkers seem to be prevalent in the land stolen from them? I assume Native Americans.
Yeah, I mean it's a
I know,
American.
like maybe it's something that was, I don't know, like a spiritual being to them that maybe was some kind of watcher, some kind of
protector.
Yeah, maybe. I don't, I don't know. I can't really answer
I don't really know either. Like the Skinwalker thing, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. Like I know a lot of people watch that show, but I just it to me it's there's a lot of production to it. I think there's places all over this country that are just like that, that have paranormal activity, have UFO activity, and it's all around, and it's whether you pay attention.
Yeah, and you mentioned energy lines, so I don't know if energy lines also correlate with that or have something to do with it.
It's a very good possibility.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if there's any more. That looks like it. I don't see any more questions. Well, Jamie and Jenny, I've had a great time. I'm glad you.
Thank you.
I know there's every once in a while I seem like I'm a little distracted. What I kind of am, I'm kind of reading the comments and watching the other because for me to see both comments, I got to watch two threads here. I got to watch the YouTube on a computer and Facebook over here. So, but yeah, I definitely enjoyed it.
You were
very fun, very fun. And Griff says great show. He said he can't wait. And earlier, I'm pretty sure he says he can't wait to, or he met you at Bill's event this year.
I'm sorry, but
I know
glad I met you too.
It's real tiny. It's
yeah, he said he met you up at Bill's event. Are you guys going to Marionville in 2 weeks? Okay.
Yes.
Griff, they will be there. So
it's always fun. I enjoy going to that.
Yes.
Wes says, have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
And D. Arnold says, thank you. He said, well, he'll be back for another chat. Hey, Leslie, if you don't have anything going on at 9 p.m., come lying out. Hop on the show. Maybe I can, Moggs. I'll try here in a little bit. The family just got home, and I'll see what I can do. But if you one of these days, I'd like to get you on and talk about what you got going on. Jamie, Jenny, it's been a pleasure.
Yes,
I really enjoyed it. I had a great time, even though Jenny's energy shut everything down there for a brief second. Yeah, it's a fun time. Thank you guys. Thank you, and good night, everyone. And guys, I'll put you in the background. And I'll get back to you in just a minute. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, folks. That's it. They are some great people. I had a great time listening to them. I like I said, I enjoy the type of things they do. I enjoy listening to the insight they have. The reason that I do is because they make me think. I enjoy that. They make you think about the things that you think you might already knew, and sometimes you realize, hey, no, you don't, and so you look into some other stuff, and that's what it's all about. I enjoy it. I enjoyed the guest. I enjoy all you guys coming. I enjoy the comments. You guys are great, and we will see you next week. Bye, y'all.